Hi, I'm Dr. Burton-Teed, and today we're going to talk about sleep. This is the Sound Sleep Protocol that I've designed as part of the Vitality Plan program. And as you'll see from the pillars, I've put sleep as the very first pillar. Now, this could be due to a personal bias because sleep has always been one of the issues that I have struggled with in my life, and that absolutely makes a 100% difference to my energy, my mood, my cognitive abilities. So I know from personal experience just how important sleep is and that it can be tricky for some people. So we start with sleep, and we start with sleep for lots of reasons. We look at all of these pillars in the program and we support each of them, but without good sleep, we can't exercise as efficiently. We make poor choices in food. It's harder to cope with stress. So it's a really good foundational step. So as you see, we step through the program, sound sleep is in the first one, but the other important component throughout the Vitality Plan is this concept of tuning in. We have this little figure down here to represent that. And what I mean by tuning in is getting a sense of where you are as we start the program, so that you can kind of gauge how the different changes that we make impact those things. So, for example, if you're struggling with anxiety, on either our accountability tracker or just in your own journal, however you kind of keep track for yourself. Some people post a graph on the fridge, some people keep it in an Excel file. I have trackers that I provide on the website that you can use, but whatever format works for you, just to kind of step back and tune in to what's going on in your body. Think about your cognition and mood. Are you having heart palpitations or anxiety? Are you having any GI issues? Are you having any pain in the body anywhere? And just kind of note those, and on a little scale of 1 to 10, so that as we change things, you can watch how it impacts that. So the goal with all of these, what these pillars are holding up, these are kind of the goal of the program, is manyfold, and it's different for different people. So most of my patients experience immediately the sense of better energy. Excuse me. We get balancing of hormones and blood sugar, improved memory, healing the guts, creating a healthy microbiome. And this is not all just accomplished through sleep. These kind of pillars work in a very synergistic, holistic way, but sleep is one of the foundations for all of these things to happen. So let's move on. So again, just why is sleep so important? So we talked a little bit about it, how it's we need both adequate amount of sleep and restful sleep in order to get these improvements in energy and mood. We get a healing and repair. That's when our body does most of its repair work at night, and that's primarily responsible in reaction to growth hormone being secreted at night. Our brains literally get rinsed out as we sleep at night. This is a system in the body called the glymphatic system, and yeah, it kind of does a rinse. We cope better with stress. Our adrenal glands get a break. Our nervous system gets a chance to kind of heal and rejuvenate. Our blood sugar and insulin balance is thrown off, and our food choices, will look on that at that a little more deeply on a later slide. Just generally reducing pain and inflammation in the body. And we'll look at how it kind of impacts our weight as well. So those were the benefits of getting plenty of sleep. These are the consequences of lack of sleep. They're just, every lifestyle choice we make has an impact on our health. And unfortunately, we do have an increased risk of the biggest problems facing our society, our world, in fact, and the kind of the ones that we're all trying to prevent. So sleep is a fundamental part of preventative medicine. So let's look at this cycle for a minute. There are several different cycles. This is just one that we're going to look at. But so we start with less sleep. our bodies then secrete more of certain hormones in response to that. Ghrelin increases and leptin decreases. You may never have heard of either of those hormones, but they're very important in our blood sugar metabolism and weight gain or loss. Ghrelin, we in medical school, to remember the difference between those two, we thought of ghrelin as the gremlin that was always hungry and requesting more food. And basically that's what happens. Lack of sleep increases our ghrelin, increases our hunger and appetite. So we eat more. We develop this unstable blood sugar because often when we're in that state, when we're hungry or making poor choices, we're eating more high carbohydrate foods, which shoots the blood sugar up, the insulin follows, the blood sugar crashes, and we get in this cycle. We will talk about that in a lot of depth in the nutrition module, and in several modules actually, in the stress module and several modules, because again, it's all interrelated. So as we dial up each of these things, that's how we best find our balance. So we start this blood sugar roller coaster. Cortisol also comes into play because it's got to then help us when our blood sugar drops. Cortisol's got to bring it back up. And cortisol is one of the hormones in the body that tells us to store fat, particularly around the middle. And if we're in this cycle in the middle of the night, we have cortisol dropping, or we have blood sugar dropping, cortisol coming up. As that happens, that's also one of our stress hormones. So we're awakened at night. So we'll talk about that more in the section coming up, whether you're having trouble falling asleep or staying asleep. This is probably the primary cause I see. Blood sugar dysregulation during the day, leading to this awakening kind of in this panic state at night. We stabilize blood sugar and that goes. So let's talk about quantity of sleep. So we've talked, we need both the right amount of sleep and we need it to be restful sleep. So let's talk about amount of sleep. So 7 to 8 hours per night is by most sources the goal. Occasionally, some sources say 8.5 maximum. But I do a lot of work with chronically fatigued patients and patients that actually need more than 9 hours, at least when they're in that initial healing phase. So I think let's take this with a grain of salt. But the less than 7, nobody needs less than 7. It just, if you can sleep for 7 hours, let yourself. If you can't, that's what we're working on. We need to do more things, create more sleep hygiene rituals, and support your nervous system to get you that at least to that 7-hour mark. Napping is another controversial issue in sleep medicine, and napping is fine. But this is again where we tune into our bodies. So for some people, a 15-minute nap that's perfect and that's all they need. For others, they need a bit more. But if that bit more interrupts your nighttime sleep, then you do need to pare it back. There is some research supporting the fact that a 20-minute nap in the day is as restorative as 1 hour of nighttime sleep. So naps actually can be used very carefully and can be an important part of filling any sleep debts that we've had from a late night for whatever reason, or just certain schedules. If you can manage a 7-hour night, but you know you need more sleep than that, a 7-hour night plus a half an hour nap can get you the sleep that you need. Okay, so why aren't we getting enough sleep? We understand that it's important. We all feel better after a good night's sleep. Why aren't we getting it? This is a deeper issue than we're going to solve right now. But I think the bottom line from working with patients and hearing story after story is that we've disconnected from our bodies. So a lot of us just either don't recognize our sleep signals or we ignore the signs that the body is giving us. So that, again, is part of the tuning in, spending some time getting some really quality sleep, and then seeing that, oh, my joints aren't as achy. Oh, I work so much more efficiently. As we tune in and give ourselves what we need, we see how important it is, actually. The other issue is just kind of, as our modern society, we don't prioritize sleep. I think this is due to kind of a cultural belief that productivity is more important than rest and self-care, and people are not stopping and donating the time in their day to do the self-care and the slowing down a bit. Instead, there's a lot of go, do. So that's just something that we need to bring our awareness to and find out how to step back from the drive for productivity, doing more, seeing more, buying more, and turning that inward and doing more to support ourselves. So a few more specific reasons. What I generally see is that there is a fixed wake-up time with my patients. Most people have to get up at a certain time. Working backward, the evening is more flexible. So they haven't actually just kind of sat down to do the math and say, if I have to get up at 7 every day, and I know I do better on 8 hours of sleep, I have to be asleep by 11. Some of them get into bed at 11, or they've thought a little bit about it and realize, oh, I get into bed at 11, but then it actually ends up being 11:15, and then it takes them a half an hour to fall asleep. And when we actually calculate it, they're just not getting the amount of sleep that they need. So just taking some time to figure that out, and recognizing, why aren't we getting to sleep? What is stopping us? Why are we spending this time in bed, and not being as efficient with our time as far as kind of how we do our sleep routine at night? So screens are just a really big issue, and we're going to talk a little bit more in later slides about the light coming off of screens, the stimulation of the content that we're watching, and of how all of that affects our sleep. And it's just we're so fixated on what is on the screen. Again, we're not listening to the signals. We're missing kind of that opportunity. Sleep kind of is thought of to come in waves, and some people, it's very clear for them, it's about an hour and a half cycle. And if they miss that first sleep wave at 10:30, then they don't catch the next one until midnight. So just kind of figuring out where in the evening, when we have to really have ourselves in bed and ready to sleep, is really important. And backing that up, stopping our screens before that so that we aren't distracted and missing the cues to kind of catch our sleep wave. The other thing with screens is they are addictive. They're designed to be addictive. They're designed for us to watch them and pay their advertisers money. They're not designed to help us live better, healthier lives. So we have to have the same kind of discipline that we would impose on our children with ourselves, with screens and bedtime. Part of that is adjusting the screens so that we're getting the low light. Almost all devices, I think all devices on the market these days, you just have to go into the settings and find how to switch them into night mode, and then reduce the brightness as low as you can take it. And then I also ask patients to just try to give yourself an hour before sleep of no screen. The other reason that I hear all the time, this is probably the number one reason that patients self-report. They're not recognizing the screens as much of an issue, but what they do report is that they're staying up too late because they haven't gotten enough downtime or me time yet in their day. So again, that is prior to what that means. Is it just time to not have to think? Is it time to be entertained, often by television? Is it time to just create space to let your mind wander and get some thinking time? Figuring out what you really need in the day, and then trying to prioritize getting that earlier somewhere. If it's a lunch break where you can go off with a journal, or it's a time to sit and read a book in the evenings, just starting that process and recognizing that me time. If you need it every day, let's not wait and do it at the very end of the day. I know that's hard for people with jobs and children, but just even slipping in 10 minutes of me time earlier in the day helps us to not take as much, need hours at night and to disrupt our sleep. And then the other issue, and we're going to get into this more deeply in the next slide, is they either can't get to sleep or they can't stay asleep. So let's talk more about that. Basically, we need to really work hard to deliberately enhance our sleep. For some people, others not as much, and do some very intentional self-care to help ease that transition into sleep. So let's talk about sleep quality. So we've got people who have trouble falling to sleep. They get into bed at night. They're either anxious that they realize that they only have 7 hours until they have to be up, and that stress kind of feeds into the cycle of not being able to fall to sleep. On a kind of physiological level, we see a lot of adrenal dysregulation. The adrenal gland has gotten out of whack, and rather than the circadian or the cortisol curve starting high in the morning and then slowly tapering off as we get to bed, we can get a flipped curve, so it's lower during the day and it actually rises at night. That's really hard to get to sleep if you've got cortisol driving your system to go, go, go. So we start with the basics, but that's kind of a more advanced testing that we do to figure out if that's what's going on. Then there's some neurotransmitter imbalances that also begin. That's primarily due to several things, but a lack of nutrients that help those neurotransmitters get metabolized and processed. So that's why, again, we have to look at this all holistically, and all of these pillars work together synergistically to hold up this house or temple or whatever the graphic is. And then nervous system overstimulation. Our nervous systems aren't getting a chance in the day to calm down. We're kind of constantly in go mode. So that kind of turns up the dial in the nervous system and just heightens our sensitivity. So the light at night is even more stimulating than it would be. Noise, worry. We're just kind of, if we take care of these other systems, it helps us to calm down with sleep. And then the other things on the list we're going to talk to in more detail in a moment. So then the other issue that we deal with is either trouble falling asleep or trouble staying asleep, and some people have both. So as I mentioned before, blood sugar instability, which starts earlier in the day and just kind of, you get on that roller coaster and it's still carrying on at night and waking you up, it is a really big one. Just the adrenal dysfunction we talked about before, the need to urinate, so just modifying or restricting our water in the evening can be really helpful for some people. Calming down the nervous system, addressing chronic pain, that can be something that wakes people up. And again, once we do some sleep diaries and paying attention to sleep for those people that are in that state and really need that level of honing in, we can kind of start to figure out what's missing and how to support that. So what are we going to do about it? So sleep hygiene is the general kind of field where we look at the environment and the behaviors leading up to sleep. So let's start with the day leading up to sleep. And actually, good sleep starts in the morning. Believe it or not, patients find that shocking when I say that, but the earlier we expose ourselves to natural light and kind of move our bodies, going for a walk in the morning. I actually did a health continuing medical education seminar a few years ago, and the presenter said, what's the number one thing we can do to improve our health? And everyone was throwing out all these very educated and, well thought out answers. And his answer was, get a dog, because you have to get up early, get outside in the light, and take them for a walk. Take yourself for a walk. I just loved that. It really is important to set the circadian rhythm. So whether you can get right up and out, that's great. But even just getting up and immediately opening the curtains, so we're getting the light as soon as possible, that sets the melatonin production, that helps the melatonin production for later at the evening. And melatonin is kind of our natural sleep hormone. So we want to do everything we can to help the circadian rhythm. There are also these natural light alarm clocks for people who live in countries that are kind of drearier and kind of winter time, their circadian rhythm gets thrown off more, or people who have seasonal affective disorder and find that their sleep is really affected by that. These lights in the day, natural light kind of sources and clocks can be very helpful. Again, we talked about stabilizing blood sugar and insulin. So that starts at breakfast. If we're eating a high carb meal, from the beginning of the day with no fats and protein to help stabilize our blood sugar, which I just find patient after patient, they think they're doing a great job, and they come in and they look at their diet diary, and we're seeing porridge, and a porridge with a bit of honey. That's just a bowl of carbs, and the body sees that there's a bit of fiber. They're trying their best, and it's well intentioned, but if you have any level of carbohydrate intolerance, which a lot of us do, that just starts the blood sugar roller coaster. So it's important to really look at the diet in connection with as well, and also how close to sleep we're eating. 3 to 4 hours is the general guideline to stop kind of time restricted eating, stop eating 3 to 4 hours before sleep. And then moving your body every day. And we have a whole pillar devoted to exercise. We'll talk about that in a lot more detail in another module. But if you can only walk 10 minutes a day, start there and maybe stay there. We'll see. It's different for every different person, but we need to move our bodies every day. Okay, so during the day, we're still doing things. Stress reduction throughout the day. We have, again, a whole nother module to really hone in on that, but just to start to bring your awareness to what's going on. If we can make a little bit of space throughout the day, even pockets of 3 minutes to just calm down, do a few yoga poses, if that seems too frou-frou for you, sitting with a cup of tea, just calming the system down and turning the brain off for a little bit does wonders for kind of setting that hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis, stopping the cortisol and the fight or flight reaction through the day, and just calming down our nervous system. So that kind of also is part of this making more deliberate me time throughout the day, so that we don't get to the end of the day and we've worked and we've taken care of children and we've cooked meals and we've just done things for other people throughout the day, and we haven't actually just gotten to take a breath and tune in with ourselves. Absolutely important and needs to be done, but can it be done in a bath in the hour leading up to sleep rather than when we get into bed at night? And then again, the resting in the day. A nap is worth trying for people who can get that into their day and find that they are sleep deprived at night and can't manage to shift that or increase those hours. Using a nap therapeutically can be a game changer for people. So now we've gotten to the evening routine. So there's several things to pay attention to. Again, the blood sugar and conscious eating, not loading our system with carbohydrates that are going to be quickly broken down. And then in the middle of the night, we have a blood sugar, insulin crash, and cortisol has to raise that up, and we kind of wake up in a panic. So and then also the time restricted eating, just so we're not going to sleep with a full tummy and getting indigestion issues. Restricting alcohol is really important. This is an interesting cycle because a lot of my patients with sleep issues find that they feel that they can't get to sleep without alcohol. So it's a crutch that our society is just a socially acceptable crutch that a lot of people lean on. And as I teach them, there are other ways to actually nourish the nervous system and tonify the body rather than using alcohol. And we replace that. And some people, it's kind of a slow process, and then we can actually really make headway because the things that we're replacing that alcohol with don't disturb sleep. So they can then get quality sleep and really start healing. So alcohol is a big one. It's hard for a lot of people to recognize or believe. I think there's some denial over it because it's a fun part of life, and a lot of people, that's kind of that's how they unwind. But there are other techniques, and we deal with that a lot more in some of the other modules. A lot of other patients find it very helpful to have a notepad either by the bed or do just some journaling, do a to-do list, keep a bullet journal, something so that the thoughts that are swirling around in their mind, that they're worried they're going to forget, so they keep kind of going over it and over it to almost memorize them for the next day. If you get them down on paper, you can kind of put them to bed at night before you put yourself to bed. And then smoking. it's a biggie. It's a stimulant. It impairs our oxygenation of the body, which hampers our sleep. If there's one thing, if you're still smoking, please stop. Yeah, that's all I'm going to say for that right now. Okay, so artificial light. Artificial light at night is just a big baddie in current society. We evolved to rise with the sun and kind of start our bedtime routine as the sun goes down. So we are using artificial light to extend our day, but that's also affecting our circadian rhythm. So just bringing our awareness to the fact that blue light from screens has that same wavelength of the light in the middle of the day. So that confuses our brains. So stopping devices an hour before bed and minimizing even before that, turning up to the night mode on your screen is important. The broad spectrum light bulbs that most of us have through our houses can cause a problem. There are a couple of ways to address that. We can either switch our light bulbs, which I have done in our bedrooms. So in our bedrooms, we have the light bulbs that you can kind of modify that during the day. It's a bright, lovely sunshine, and at night we have it on a very amber, almost red light. So however you want to address it, but it does need to be addressed. The other thing to do before we switched our light bulbs, I used to wear amber glasses around our house, much to my husband and daughter's amusement. But I decided to switch the lights because they need that same kind of wind down time, and they were refusing to wear the amber glasses. So we went for the light bulb approach instead. The other thing is we have a lot of light pollution coming in. A lot of councils and districts are trying to do well by the environment and switching to LED light bulbs. So at night, rather than kind of the older amber colored lights in our street lights, they've switched to a very bright daylight. So blocking that out is important. So blackout blinds. If it's really hard for you to manage that, I think it's a step that I encourage all of my patients to take. If you can't do blackout blinds for whatever reason, at least an eye mask, but an eye mask doesn't work as well. It helps, but the pineal gland is actually here and our skin picks up on any light coming in. So our melatonin production is still thrown off if we're getting that artificial light, even if we're wearing a mask. Okay, so some other things to pay attention to in your nighttime routine, reducing our fluid intake. So for some people that they just set an alarm, I don't drink anything after 8 p.m. and then I go to bed at 10 and I can make it through the night. Other people they just get too thirsty and then we have a dehydration and a different issue. So for those people, we do some electrolytes in the water, and electrolytes just help our system hold on to the water longer so that we're not being awakened once, or some people have been twice or more through the night. More than once a night wake up, I have that on a slide later, but we do need to investigate if there's something else going on. Avoiding stimulants. So this is caffeine, this is coffee, tea, chocolate. These are stimulants, even green tea. For some people's systems, that's too much and they can't do any caffeine, because caffeine has quite a long half-life, so it can be in some people's systems for 48 hours. So I'm very caffeine sensitive. I've learned that over the years, and it does affect my sleep. So I can't really even have chocolate after about 2 in the afternoon, or that could affect me. Stimulating entertainment. Even a book, I put that first on the list because a lot of people are in bed thinking it's okay, I'm reading my book. If it's a thriller or something too engaging, that's kind of turning our fight or flight reflex on, books in general are much better than movies and kind of a lot of these shows that are trying to just get us in that scared state. But kind of being very mindful of the entertainment you're watching or reading in the evening is important. And things like checking work email, conversations with toxic or stressful people, doing any social media, This is kind of we have to start kind of creating this lovely environment in the evening that keeps the rest of the world out, and it's all about self-care and toning down and calming the nervous system down. Noise is another thing to be mindful of. So just in part of this calming and quieting down, we need to be mindful of what kind of noise is in them, what kind of music, kind of what that's doing to our nervous system. And sometimes we don't have control over the noise that we're exposed to if we're in a city or we've got noisy neighbors or who knows, teenagers. So getting some kind of a white noise machine, an app on the phone. I don't love phones in the bedroom, so a white noise machine. If you do decide to keep your phone in the bedroom, please put it on airplane mode. Yeah, so a white noise machine, something to kind of just create some level of buffering between noises that you don't have control over in the night that could be disturbing your sleep. Okay, so some restorative self-care to help us really calm down and soothe the nervous system. So low amber lights, gentle music, non-stimulating entertainment, so a book that's a non-thriller, mindful coloring, a warm bath with Epsom salts, some restorative yoga moves, or an herbal tea, some kind of bedtime tea. Again, careful if that's going to get you up in the night to urinate. Some kind of self-care, a foot rub from a partner. It's a mindfulness meditation, even just going through your routine at bedtime with brushing your teeth, just recognizing, turning off the other thoughts and slowly saying to yourself, I'm taking care of my teeth. I'm just calming myself down and just checking in with how you are mindfully moving through your evening. Okay, so once the head hits the pillow, there are various techniques for people who just struggle with that. There's almost an anxiety for some people that they're not going to fall asleep and that they need to, and then that stress makes everything even more. So these are kind of some tried and true techniques. I go into each of them and do these in other modules. So if you are one of those people that's having trouble with that and these kind of calm down sleep hygiene techniques that we've already mentioned, kind of the basics haven't worked, then look for videos on these specific things. So our sleep environment, we talked about a little bit. We want it dark, blackout blinds, no night lights, or no alarm clocks with a glowing face on it. Noise, snoring bed partner is a problem. It's a problem for a lot of people. Snoring is not healthy for the person doing it, so it really does need to be checked as a sign of sleep apnea. We talk about that in the last slide, just kind of if there are these issues, they need to be addressed. But it's not good for the person who is the recipient or in the room with the snorer either. So separate bedrooms or getting that snoring addressed. There are breathe right strips. There are different levels of trying to address it that you can just do on your own before a sleep study, but it's very important to do. Keeping the environment cool, so a cool temperature in the room. That can be accomplished by opening a window, and that hits the next point of keeping the good air quality in the room as well. But just these are our kind of target temperatures. It can be hard to maintain some of the hotter climates. Just make this a goal. These are kind of the temperatures that are studied to help with sleep the most. And then keeping some plants in the bedroom. It's just, we spend most of our lives in our bedrooms. Of all the other places that we are in our lives, we move around the house in different rooms, and at work we're there for a certain amount of time, or in the car a certain amount of time, but the bed in our bedroom, we spend the most time breathing that air. So keeping that air quality good is important, and plants in the bedroom can help in that way. I have another module on the best plants for that. And sleeping with the windows cracked, just creating that ventilation and the coolness can be very helpful. So sleep regularity and chronicity. A lot of research shows that going to bed the same time every day is kind of the name of the game for people who really have sleep issues because they get in this cycle where they couldn't get to sleep one night, and then the following night they're so exhausted they go to sleep so many hours earlier, and then their body takes that as a nap, and then they wake up in the middle of the night, and they can really get in this unhealthy cycle. So sleep every day, the same time is important. The thing that often throws that off for people is the weekend, because those of us that do have some of these sleep problems just think, okay, fine, at the weekend I'll just catch up, I'll binge sleep to kind of catch up for the sleep debt. And to some extent that can be helpful, but it can create, for those of us that are quite sensitive to this rhythm, and an hour shift one day a week will shift the whole following week. We just have to really rein it in. And the technique that ends up helping the most is keeping the wake up time the same. So even no matter when you fell asleep at night, if you keep the wake up time the same, you basically kind of entrain your body to get sleepy enough to fall asleep the night before, is the theory. So some of my patients need more support than that. And there is an advanced sleep module for those of you that are really struggling, and these, after you've tried all of the sleep hygiene and kind of these basics that we've talked about in this module aren't enough. There are some more advanced things to try, but this could be worth trying first. Just no change in your sleep at the weekends. For people that are just too exhausted and kind of can't make it through, that's where kind of using these naps, that can be helpful as we're just trying to retrain this cycle. So the other thing to pay attention to with sleep is that we have larks and we have owls. So tuning in to who you are and what your sleep pattern is, and being mindful that sleep patterns can change. So most teenagers are night owls, but many of them turn into morning people as they get older. And when they go through that transition, it can be confusing because they think, oh, I can stay up this late, and actually they can't. So figuring out, it's called your chronotype, what your chronotype is, and then trying to work with that. The only caveat here is that I am a night owl. I'm a natural night owl. I've always been a night owl. But for night owls who push it too far and go to bed too late, we miss a really important window of melatonin production and getting a nice quality, deep quality sleep. So figuring out where your night owlness is and how you can pull it back just a little bit, if you're kind of beyond that 1 to 2 a.m. in the morning, bringing that back so that you capitalize on that good melatonin rich sleep is important. And again, we talk in a lot more detail about that in the advanced sleep module, should you need it. So supplements are important to talk about here as well. These are the basics. There are a lot of sleep supplements on the market, and we talk about those in detail. In general, these to me are basics of good health, and everyone needs to be mindful of these. Not all of us need to take melatonin, and in many cases I think it actually causes a problem and problematic. So the nutrients that we all need for overall health that we could be deficient in, yes, those we need to supplement and we need to pay attention to. So these are the big four. Our vitamin D, it will improve the time it takes to fall asleep and sleep quality to have our vitamin D in the sufficient range. So having that checked is just one of the first things that I do almost with all of my patients. I check all of these things. Magnesium, very commonly deficient, just as common as vitamin D, magnesium deficiencies. And the big thing I see with magnesium and B vitamins is the people that can't turn their brains off. That's often a signal that their neurotransmitters are just still swirling around and they haven't been metabolized and broken down. So the excitatory neurotransmitters are still swirling around and the body can't break them down because we don't have the cofactors that we need to metabolize them. So magnesium and B6 are in almost every pathway for breaking down excitatory neurotransmitters. There are other vitamins as well, but those are the big two. So I make sure that we work on those things from the start. And then iron. Iron's a big one, and it's often low, particularly in women. So worth investigating and checking where your levels are. So this is a helpful exercise to first tune in to what works for you and what your issues are, and then to help hold yourself accountable. So you can create one of these kind of accountability checklists. I have some on the Dr. Burton-Teed website. It's creating your list of goals. So do you want to sleep for 8 hours a night? Do you want to sleep for 9 hours a night? Do you want to sleep for 7 hours a night and a nap? Creating what works for you and your lifestyle, and then actually writing down the action that you have to take to accomplish that goal. So this is an example of a patient. She wants to be asleep by 10:30 based on the time she has to wake up. She needs to be asleep by 10:30. And in order to do that, she decided that she needed to set an alarm. Her TV remote had an ability to, these smart TVs, you can set an alarm that the TV turns off at 9:30. That she has an hour for calm down and, kind of that sleep hygiene and creating space to just calm down before bed. She grappled with needing to quiet a busy mind. So she was one of the people that does well to get things down on paper before bed. She had some noisy neighbors that were often awakening her in the night. So we got her a white noise app on her phone. Then soothing the nervous system, and that can be every night or every other night or as often as you can. A bath or whatever resonates for you as one of those activities or something that you come up with on your own. She chose to alternate meditation some nights and a bath with Epsom salts. I don't have that on the list, but with Epsom salts other nights. And then circadian support, no alcohol. We identified that alcohol was a problem for her sleep. So she just had gotten to the point where she really was suffering with sleep issues. So she just decided to get rid of alcohol and go for a morning walk to kind of help that circadian rhythm and melatonin production. So if we look through how she rates her sleep and how she does, so Sunday she's at a 6, and as we go through the week, we'll see. So then a 7, 8, 9, and then a Friday night's a 5, Saturday's a 6. So if you look through, it doesn't take long to figure out, okay, on the nights she didn't sleep well, Friday's her worst night, what happened? She didn't do the getting things down on paper. She didn't do the white noise app. She didn't take a bath or meditate, and she didn't abide by her no alcohol rule. So this is a very common picture. We get to the weekend, people start drinking, and then they throw everything out the window, and their sleep is really affected. So it's just helpful for patients to see this in black and white. Sometimes it takes them a month of the same pattern or 3 months of the same pattern before they finally are ready to make a change. But seeing it for themselves is very helpful. So I encourage everyone to create one of these for yourselves and just figure out what it is on the nights that you're off and work very hard to modify those things. So the next steps, if all of this that we've just talked through doesn't do the trick for you, then the next thing to do is dig a little deeper. So tidying up a diet a bit more. Some people just don't quite make that connection about how much our diet and particularly our blood sugar stability affects our sleep. So we usually start with tidying up the diet a bit more. Then we move on to kind of the advanced sleep support and tonifying the nervous system and adrenal glands even more. That can be with herbs or various things, but I talk in a lot more depth in the advanced sleep module for those of you that need that extra help. Getting into a doctor and checking just for other underlying health disorders. And some people need a sleep study to understand what's going on. Sleep apnea is often it's found a lot for people who are having significant tiredness during the day and sleepiness during the day, and just they might be sleeping for 8 hours, but it's not a quality, deep, refreshing sleep. Don't ignore snoring. That needs to be addressed. That is a major sign of sleep apnea, and awakening, gasping for air. Those are the two big signs that there's something going on that needs to be addressed quite quickly, or our health just will deteriorate with long-term poor sleep. Pain that's disturbing your sleep, that's a tough one. We can do all of these other things in the sleep hygiene and the tonifying the nervous system, and then if you're just in pain, it's hard to fall asleep, or it's easy to be awakened by pain. So getting to the bottom of pain is worth doing to improve your sleep overall. And then if you're urinating more than once a night with fluid restriction, that needs further investigation as well. So these are my initial thoughts on sleep. Most of my patients do really well just doing these very basic things to start. A lot of it, we don't need kind of fancy supplements and formulas to help us sleep, or we all know how to sleep. We're all designed to sleep. It's where we repair and heal and get to thriving health. It's through sleep. So prioritizing it is at the very top of my list for all of my patients, and I wish you the best. If you need any more support, check out some of the other videos. Thank you.